That was the updating lifecycle for prop changes. Most important takeaway, the hook you'll use by far most often will be component did update, which is after the update finished, when you, for example, need to fetch new data from a server. Let's now also have a look at the lifecycle hook for internal changes, when the state changes. We can do that with the help of app.js. In there, we do change the state after all when people enter something into one of our person inputs. And therefore in there, let's also add, after component did mount, component did update. And you could also add the get snapshot before update hook in here if you wanted to. I'll leave it be and just add component did update. And I'll add one other hook before component did update, and that will be should component update, where I get my next props and my next state. And therefore here I will also console log should app.js should component update. Let's see if these hooks are triggered as well. So if I reload here, toggle persons, then I actually fail. Do you know why? Well, it basically actually gives us the reason here. Should component update, as I mentioned earlier, has to return something. And if you're returning undefined, this is basically treated as false and therefore blocks the update. So if I return false here, for example, to make this even clearer, I'll not get the warning anymore, but toggling will not work because I'm preventing the update. Here, the update would be necessary though, because the update would render all these person items. But if I'm preventing it because I know better, well, then this is not going to happen. Of course, we'll learn the smart way of using should component update in this module too. So for now, I'll just set this to true to always allow the update, which by the way is also the default. If you don't include this hook, then it also always lets React go ahead. So now we see that again. And now if I type one character, we see we get the update from app.js, get derived state from props. Then we get should component update here, render. Then we're in the persons.js updating hook. And then in the end, we're at component did update for app.js. So we spent a lot of time on all these lifecycle hooks. And knowing them is important. When you're working with class-based components, it's important that you know how they actually are created and where you can execute your custom code during that lifecycle process. Important, component did mount, component did update, and also for performance improvements, should component update are the most important hooks, because in component did mount and component did update, you will typically do things like fetching new data from a server. Should component update, well, we'll dive into that again in this module, can be used for performance improvements. But what about functional components? I mentioned that the lifecycle is only available for class-based components. And prior to the introduction of React hooks, functional components had nothing that would compare to that, which was fine because we only used them for presentational purposes. But now with React hooks, you can actually build your entire React app with functional components only because you can manage the state in there. So you should also have a tool for running some code whenever the component updates or when it is created. And therefore, what is the equivalent to these lifecycle hooks for functional components?